morning and welcome to this centenary conference, the Russlaender Mennonites, War, Dislocation, and New Beginnings, which explores through academic papers, literary conversations, and film the historic migration of Mennonites from Russia to Canada between 1923 and 1929. I'm Dr. Tracy Whalen. I'm the Acting Dean of Arts here at the University of Winnipeg, and I would like to extend a warm welcome to those of you present here at the University of Winnipeg. I just met somebody who's come from Pennsylvania, so I know some of you have traveled from afar. And I would like to welcome those joining us virtually from around the world. I would like to begin this morning with an acknowledgement of the lands upon which we gather here today. We are located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. The University of Winnipeg sits in Treaty 1 territory, the ancestral and traditional homeland of the Anishinaabe peoples. We acknowledge, too, that our water, which is so precious for life and sacred, is sourced from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation. Acknowledgements like these are part of larger conversations and actions around place, dislocation, settlement, around power, disease, the importance of language, respect for, attention to our ancestors, the importance of being attentive to history, to violence, as well as to the resilience of human spirit and community. These topics I see are among those taken up in this conference, which provides an important opportunity to reflect on land, home, ownership, and dispossession. I'm struck by the richness of this conference. It features conversations with award-winning writers, papers by globally recognized scholars, a film screening, and traveling alongside and intersecting with the conference, the Russlaender Centenary Train Tour, which is retracing the journey of the Russlaender Mennonites. Many of those travelers will be or are joining us today. Welcome. I am honored to be Dean of a faculty that includes a chair in Mennonite Studies and a program like the Center for Transnational Mennonite Studies, which is hosting this conference. I know there has been a lot of work and thoughtfulness in its organization. I wish you all a wonderful 2 days. From dislocation and epidemic, once again, we find ourselves together, located, and we are reminded once again what can emerge from congregation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy, for that wonderful welcome. I would also like to introduce myself. I'm Nobbs-Thiessen, the Chair of Mennonite Studies here at the University of Winnipeg, and one of the co-directors for the Center for Transnational Mennonite Studies, along with my colleague, Dr. Aileen Friesen. Welcome again to our fall conference, which is not taking place in the fall. The weather is unusually warm because we wanted to time this with the arrival of the Memories of Migration Russlaender Centenary 100 tour, which, when I saw Aileen this morning, I was relieved to realize had actually arrived on time last night. So just a show of hands, are there other members who are on the train coming in from Ontario here? Okay, that's wonderful. Well, a warm welcome to all of you. We're glad to have you here, along with other folks that have come in locally or from further afield. We have, over the next 2 days, I think 20 panelists presenting on a wide variety of topics, 3 featured author conversations, a documentary screening, a couple of receptions, and our research center prizes work that crosses national borders, hence a transnational research center, and so we're really pleased to have presenters coming in from Canada, Europe, Israel, and elsewhere that have worked in multiple archives in multiple languages, And most of the congratulations, I think all of them are due really to my colleague Aileen for bringing together this transnational, transatlantic roster. So really thank you so much, Aileen. And also thank you, because sometimes you forget at the end of the conference to give thanks to the Riley Foundation for supporting this, to the University of Winnipeg, to Mennonite Central Committee through the Divergent Voices of Canadian Mennonites grant, and to the Mennonite Historical Society of Canada. Our panelists, when we have multiple person panels, will typically be presenting relatively short presentations, 15 minutes usually. There'll be time for question period after all of the presentations on a panel have concluded. You'll see probably one of our volunteers, like Michaela Hebert, who's at the back there, who welcomed you in, roving around with a microphone, so you can raise your hand to ask questions. And we welcome your comments and questions for the different panelists. And we'll try and keep to a very busy schedule that we have here today. A couple more notes. Papers from this conference, select papers, will appear in the Journal of Mennonite Studies. If you're not a subscriber to our journal, we welcome you to join our subscriber list. Next year we'll have 2 editions that will feature papers from this conference. And there will also be articles appearing in Preservians, which Aileen edits, which also deal with themes about Russlaender migration and experiences in the coming year. I want to close just with a reflection. Many of us here have a personal connection to this history of the 1920s migration. And my mom was reminding me, and she's here today, that in some senses this is not our family's story, but in other ways it is. My Oma was born in 1924, and she recounts, or was told, that in 1927 her parents desperately wanted to leave Ukraine as well, but they were unable to get permission to leave. And it would be another 2 decades before she was able to leave, and her parents were never able to. And I think when we consider that, historians don't write counterfactual history, the sort of what-ifs, but we can't help but consider the stories of those who remained alongside the stories of those who left, bound together as they are. And I'm pleased to see we will have reflections on that as well in this conference for the decision-making that went into that moment in the 1920s. So I want to welcome up Aileen and my talk, and I look forward to speaking with you all this weekend.
Hello, everyone here and virtually. I didn't know if the train would make it in time for me to be here to introduce the conference, the Russlaender Mennonites, War, Dislocation, and New Beginnings. I'm glad it did arrive not on time, but not too late. For those of you who don't know me, as Ben said, my name is Aileen Friesen, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of History and co-director of CTMS, as well as the executive director of the Plett Foundation. And many years ago, when Royden Lowen, some of you might know him, enabled Ingrid Mollman to follow through with her creative idea of commemorating the migration of the 1920s Mennonites from the Soviet Union to Canada with a reenactment across Canada. Let's use the word creative to describe this idea. I've used many other terms throughout the planning of this event. He promised that we would host an academic conference, and then he retired, as one does in these circumstances. And he left it to us to organize the conference, and I would like to thank Jeremy Weeb and Nobbs-Thiessen for their help in putting all of this together. But the train trip, in addition to giving me the opportunity to follow the path of my maternal ancestors, including my grandmother, who arrived in Quebec City in 1926, has reminded me that journeys are easier together. In our secular, individualistic world, obsessed with money and prestige, it's easy to think that all we need is ourselves. The Russlaender Mennonites who arrived here, the Canadian Mennonites who welcomed them, knew better. It is community that makes the impossible possible. It is community that holds us, comforting us, sustaining our spirit, our faith. It is community that holds us, carrying the weight of what we can no longer bear. And it is community that holds us, preserving the stories of our ancestors that offer lessons in strength, perseverance, but also in despair, moral conundrums, and ethical failures. So I want to thank the community of scholars who agreed to present at our conference, both in person and virtually, who will teach us, who will challenge us in new ways. And while I treasure the contribution of everyone here, I would like to highlight The displaced Ukrainian scholars, Natalia Wenger and Olena Hodchenko, who despite their own struggles as refugees, their own burden of concerns over loved ones still in a war zone, and the fate of their country during a horrific period and Russian occupation, still choose to engage in scholarship and still choose to tell this story. And I want to thank you, the community, interested in this history. Look at this full house. Only through your interest, your participation, will this story survive. We can't take this for granted. The Russlaender knew the importance of sharing, of writing, of reflecting. So it is my hope that this conference is a beginning of a renewal for our interest in this history and the discussions that will arise from it. So thank you.